Today I want to talk to you about everything I know and I needed to learn about color theory, how I use it when I'm choosing the colors for my paintings, how I mix my own colors, and also how I mix skin tones, if you guys want to see that. Also want to talk about color harmony and how artists use it in their art. Before I want to get into everything, in this video I am using red, blue, and yellow as my primary colors, and I know it's going to be frustrating for some of you guys because I've been told that it's actually magenta, cyan, and yellow, but because I'm going to be going off of the traditional color wheel and most beginner art sets have red, blue, and yellow, that's just what we're going to be working with today. So we're gonna start off by making our own color wheel, and this is such a good exercise for you guys to know just what the primary colors add up to, and also it lets you know what kind of colors you have and what kind of combinations you're gonna get from the primary colors that are in your palette. So it's sometimes different depending on the brand, but this is how you get to know what kind of colors that you can get out of it. So it's important to know that in order to get these very vibrant colors, all of your primary colors have to be in the same color temperature. So you never want to mix a warm blue with a cool yellow because you would end up with a muddy looking green instead of something that's very nice and vibrant. So there are some yellows that would have a red undertone to them, and those yellows are actually a warmer yellow, while there are also yellows like the lemon yellow that will have a blue shift to it that is actually a cooler yellow. So it's very hard to determine sometimes, so actually just use Google, especially for the blues, because it's very hard for me to figure out what kind of blues are warm and which ones are cool. So Google is your friend, especially if you're ordering your paints online. Just try and take the time to Google what temperature your colors are so you can know how they mix with each other. My primary colors are very cool in this video, but these colors will come up with the same secondary colors that we were taught as kids. So red and blue makes purple, your blue and yellows will make green, and if you mix your yellows and your reds you will get orange, and those colors will be your secondary colors. Now you can add these secondary colors to your original primary colors and come up with your tertiary colors. So I think these are easier to remember because they're called blue violet, yellow green, and things like that. You can really just see from their names what the colors that make them up are. We're just gonna be moving on to how I mix my colors. Really all I need to know about color theory is just based off of the color wheel and the primary colors. So your primary colors are red, yellow, and blue, and your complementary colors are the colors that are opposite each other in the color wheel. So you can see that yellow is opposite to violet. These two are complementary colors. So these two next to each other in art will create the biggest contrast, and actually in a lot of my paintings I use complementary colors in some kind of way, but when you mix these two colors together you actually end up with a very muddy, sometimes grayish looking color depending on how much of each color you're adding, and that's because all of the primary colors mixed together make black. So now we know that red and yellow makes orange. So what I do is actually just mix in blue with the orange that I have because that is its complementary color. I know those two mixed together will give me something that's close to gray or black. And this works because all of your primary colors again mixed together makes black, and what happens when you're mixing an orange with a blue is that you're actually mixing red, blue, and yellow together because orange is actually just red and yellow, and adding its complementary color blue to that is just mixing the primary colors together again. But now that we know how to mix our own vibrant looking colors, there's a bunch of ways that we can get a lot of variations from those colors. So if you take your white and add those to the pure hue that you have, you'll have oranges with different tints to it, and in the same way adding black will change its shade. So tint is adding white to a pure color, your shade is adding black to a pure color, and then you can also add gray to your color, in which case you will be changing its tone. This may be a little bit off topic, but now we're gonna use everything that we know about mixing our own colors in mixing our own skin tones, because I've been getting a lot of requests for this, and this time I'm using gouache, but I actually have a few videos of me doing this exact same thing but with different mediums. So I have a video of me using red, blue, and yellow to make a colored pencil portrait, so I do have a video of that, and I also have skin tone tutorial with watercolors, so I will be linking both of those in the description for this one. So I'm gonna start off with my darkest shade, and my favorite dark skin tone always has this purpley undertone to it, so I really like that this keeps it really dark without washing it out. So I'm gonna start with a purple by mixing my red and blue, and then when I already have my purple, I'm gonna be adding its complementary color, which is yellow, because again this mixes into black, but I'm not adding a lot, so I'm gradually adding enough yellow in there so I can get to the exact shade of brown that I want. So what's really great about mixing your own skin tones is that you only really need to remember the complementary colors. So if your mixes start looking too much of one color, you just add its complementary color to bring it back down. So for this one, I want it to look purple, but I don't want it to look too purple, and that's why I'm adding yellow. Once it does start looking too warm, I just need to add the other two back in, red and blue. For this one, I'm gonna mixing another dark skin tone, but I want it to be a lot more red. So what I'm doing is I'm actually mixing my red and yellows first to get this nice orange, and then I'm gonna do the opposite to the last one, where instead of adding yellow, I am gonna be adding more blue until I can bring it down to be just the exact warmer brown that I want. And when you're mixing skin tones, most of it is just not just that high in saturation as this. So what you can do is change up the tints and shades to your mixes by just adding white or black. Like what I'm doing right now, I'm just adding more white to it, so it brings down to the saturation but also turns it into a brighter color than the last one. So for this next one, this is a more olive tone, undertone skin. So what I'm doing is just mixing my greens first, and once again I start adding in its complementary color, which is red, to bring it down to a brown once again. But I'm also making sure that I'm not adding too much that I actually just lose that green. I'm just being very careful that I can still see it. It's nice and cool undertone when I paint with it. I also want to show you my favorite medium tan skin tone, which is very warm. So what I'm doing is I'm adding the yellow with the whites first, because I do want the yellow to be the dominant color. That's why I am gradually adding the other two in while I'm mixing. And then this next one is a lighter skin tone with a pink undertone. So what I'm doing is mixing in a pink first by adding the red with the white, and then again just gradually adding in the other two until I can get to the exact shade that I want. So if this is looking too pink for you, you already know what to do, and if you want it to be a lot warmer, you can just go ahead and add yellow to it, which is what I'm doing right now. If you want it to lean cooler or on the olive undertone side, just go ahead and add blue to it. So I hope I explained how this works. I always get requested to do this, so I hope I explained it well. So for the last part of this video, I'm going to be talking about color harmony, and this is just the aesthetically pleasing way to combine colors. There are a few different combinations that you always see in art. So the first one I want to talk about is complementary color schemes, which is a color scheme based off of two complementary colors. So we all know that complementary colors next to each other creates the most contrast. So And actually a lot of the times artists will bring down one color and keep the other one vibrant and bright. And that's because just these two colors are so in contrast to each other that a lot of the times when both of them are in the same saturation, it's almost jarring to look at. So I actually used this in this acrylic gouache painting, and you can see I've used red and green, but the green is very muted a lot and it's a lot more toned down, while I kept the red like in her rings and for her lips very bright and vibrant. And I think this just makes both of them work together, otherwise it would be actually too much. And another example of the complementary color scheme is this beautiful painting by Claude Monet. And you can see just how bright that orange sun looks when it's just laid there next to all those blues. And I think it's just a perfect example of how you can brighten up and make one color stand out by putting it next to its complementary color. Another prominent color scheme is triadic color schemes, which I just think is the hardest to pull off. And it's when you paint with three colors that are equidistant from each other on the color wheel using the primary colors. That is an example of triadic color schemes. And the reason why it's very hard to pull off these three next to each other is just so different that you kind of risk making your artwork look too busy. I think a good example for it is The Milkmaid by Johannes Vermeer. You don't really see the red to it at first. He has toned down the red in the milk jug and desaturated it by a lot, but you can clearly see the contrast between the very bright blue skirt and also the brightish color of her shirt. It wouldn't have been as effective of a color scheme if the reds were the same level of saturation as the other two. One of the most popular color schemes are monochromatic color schemes, and this is when you use one hue or color in different values and levels of saturation to make one painting. A lot of people seem to think that this makes it easier, but it is actually harder to get a dynamic looking painting when you don't have the choice to use other colors to influence the mood of your painting. So most of the time you have to rely on the contrast of your values to get a dynamic looking painting, and I think it ends up being harder. But yeah, those are one of the most popular color schemes. There are a lot more that branches off from these three. I just don't have the time to talk about all of them right now, but I do hope that you got something from this video and I hope it turned out to be helpful. But yeah, that is it for this one. Thank you guys for watching and I will be seeing you again soon.